Commander Vex Court had 4 arms, 3 of which were currently crossed in various states of irritation. The 4th was holding his 7th coffee of the morning, which was really more of a cry for help at this point. He stood in the observation deck of Nexus Orbital, staring at the thing that had ruined more careers than insider trading and office affairs combined. The quantum corridor, 50 meters of hallway that looked, at first glance, completely normal. White walls, decent lighting, could have been in any office building in any galaxy. Except this hallway had a perfect track record of absolutely destroying anyone who tried to walk through it, not metaphorically, literally destroying them. Vex had seen it all in his 20 years stationed here. The crone warlord, who'd entered flexing all 6 arms and exited as a potted fern. The silicate scholar, who'd calculated every possible quantum variance and somehow ended up scattered across 4 dimensions, 3 of which were just variations of Tuesday. The Hive Queen, who'd sent 1,000 drones through simultaneously, thinking strength in numbers would work, and they'd all come out the other side as a single, very confused pigeon. The pigeon was still in medical. Therapy wasn't going well. Every species in the known galaxy had tried to crack this thing. The Zentari military had thrown their best soldiers at it. The academic consortium had sent their brightest minds. The Merchants Guild had even tried bribing it, which said a lot about the Merchants Guild's understanding of ancient alien architecture. Nothing worked. The corridor warped reality, bent time, shuffled space like a cosmic dealer with a bad attitude. It was a test left behind by the precursors, or a warning, or maybe just the universe's idea of a joke. Nobody knew. Nobody could pass through it, unchanged, until apparently today. Because today, shuffling through the station's main concourse with all the urgency of a man looking for a gas station bathroom, came Jake Morrison. Human, cargo pilot, currently very lost and very much needing to pee. "Excuse me," Jake said, approaching Vex with the kind of confidence only humans seem to possess when they were completely out of their depth. "Where's the bathroom? I've been wandering around for like 20 minutes, and everything here looks like a spaceship designed by someone who's never met a right angle." Vex's eye stalks swiveled to examine this specimen. Average height for a human, brown hair that looked like it had been styled by a wind tunnel. Wearing a jacket that had seen better decades. The kind of guy who probably described his life choices as character building. "You are in a restricted zone," Vex said, his translator rendering his irritation perfectly. "How did you even get here?" "In navigation error," Jake said cheerfully. "Also possibly user error, definitely user error. Look, I just need to find a bathroom and maybe a sandwich, and I'll be out of your tentacles. Or whatever those are. Arms. Sure, those 2. Vex was about to call security when Jake's gaze drifted past him to the corridor entrance. The human's face brightened like he'd just found the last parking spot at a shopping center. "Oh, perfect, is that a hallway? Maybe the bathroom's through there." Every one of Vex's arms shot out to stop him. "No, absolutely not. That is the quantum corridor. It is not a hallway. It is a death trap, wrapped in a mystery wrapped in a headache." Jake blinked. "It's got walls and a floor. Pretty sure that's a hallway, buddy." And that, Vex would later reflect while updating his resume, was when everything went sideways. "Let me be extremely clear," Vex said, positioning all 4 arms in what he hoped was a sufficiently dramatic gesture. "The quantum corridor has defeated every species in the galaxy. Warriors, scientists, idiots who thought they were special. You are not special." "Never claimed to be," Jake said, already looking around the observation deck like he was bored. "Hey, is that a vending machine? Does it take human currency, or do I need to trade like teeth or something?" Vex's left eye twitched, his right eye twitched. If he'd had a third eye, it would have twitched out of solidarity. "Are you listening to me? The corridor is dangerous." "Yeah, I got that part. But also, I really need to use the bathroom, and that hallway is right there, so—" "It is not a hallway." Dr. Mira Quellen materialized from the corridor's analysis lab, her crystalline body currently cycling through shades of deep purple, the color of academic frustration mixed with disbelief. She was a prismoid, a species whose bodies reflected their emotional state through color shifts. Right now she looked like a mood ring, having an existential crisis. "Commander, why are you shouting at a human?" Her voice had the kind of clipped precision that came from writing too many grant proposals. "He wants to walk through the corridor." Mira's body flashed red. Actual fire alarm red. He what? The bathroom, Jake offered helpfully. Is it through there or not? Because I'm reaching critical levels here and I'm not proud of what I might have to do in a plant pot. Mira took a deep breath. Something she didn't technically need to do, but found helpful when dealing with beings who possessed less than 3 brain cells. Human. Let me explain in small words. The quantum corridor is an ancient precursor artifact. It shifts through dimensional space. It bends causality. It has turned people inside out, backwards through time, and in one memorable case, into a philosophical concept. We don't talk about the concept, Vex muttered. Right, Jake said, but has anyone tried just, walking through it, like normally? The silence that followed could have been used to smother a small fire. Walking normally, Mira repeated, her colors flickering between red and a new shade of orange that roughly translated to, Are you actually kidding me right now? That is everyone's plan. Every single person who enters believes they will simply walk normally through it. And they do not. The Kron Berserker tried walking normally. He is now photosynthesizing in Storage Bay 7. The Tholian Pilgrim tried walking normally. She is now living in a time loop where it is always her birthday. She hates cake. And? Jake scratched his head. Okay, but did they try walking normally while not caring about any of that stuff? Vex felt something in his brain try to understand this logic and then give up. What? Like everyone you mentioned was trying to do something. Conquer it, understand it, whatever. What if someone just walked through because they needed to get to the other side? The motivation does not matter, Mira said, though her color shifted to yellow, the hue of uncertainty. The corridor responds to the presence of consciousness itself. It warps reality regardless of intent. Huh, Jake said. Weird. Anyway, I'm gonna try it because the alternative is finding a plant pot, and I don't want that on my conscience. Which button calls the elevator? Or do you guys still use stairs? Please don't say stairs. Vex and Mira looked at each other. Then they looked at Jake, who was genuinely scanning the walls for a button. He thinks the corridor is an elevator, Vex said flatly. He's going to die, Mira replied. Yep. Should we stop him? Legally, we probably should. They watched Jake wander toward the corridor entrance, hands in his pockets, humming something that sounded like a commercial jingle. On the other hand, Vex said slowly, if by some miracle he succeeds, we would solve the greatest mystery in galactic history. Mira's colors flickered rapidly. And if he fails? Then we have the same number of casualties as yesterday, plus one human-shaped problem we no longer have to deal with. That is terrible logic. I'm having a terrible day. Jake reached the entrance and turned back. Hey, does this thing have another exit or am I going to have to turn around? Because I am not good with backtracking. I once spent 4 hours in an IKEA. It has an exit, Mira called out, her scientific curiosity overriding her ethics. Theoretically. Good enough for me. And with that, Jake Morrison, cargo pilot, walking disaster, and the galaxy's most aggressively mediocre human, stepped into the quantum corridor. Vex immediately pulled up the monitoring feeds. I give him 30 seconds before temporal displacement. Mira's colors settled into scientific purple. I calculate 15 seconds before dimensional fracturing. They were both wrong. They were both very, very wrong. The corridor welcomed Jake the way most cosmic horrors welcome their victims, with immediate, overwhelming wrongness. The walls started breathing, not metaphorically, literally inhaling and exhaling with a wet, organic sound that suggested they had opinions about interior decorating. The floor decided that down was more of a suggestion than a rule and began rotating through various interpretations of gravity. The lighting flickered between wavelengths that human eyes definitely were not supposed to perceive, including one color that tasted like regret. Jake pulled out his phone, saw he had no signal, and muttered, Figures. On the monitors, Vex watched the corridor do its thing. Reality fractured around the human like glass around a baseball. Time stuttered, showing Jake in 3 different positions simultaneously. Walking forward, standing still, and somehow already at the end, while also being at the beginning. Space folded in on itself, creating impossible geometries that would have made an architect weep and a mathematician retire. "Here it comes," Vex said, leaning forward. "The temporal shift. He's going to age rapidly, or regress to infancy, or both simultaneously." The corridor obliged. Jake's body began flickering through ages, 20, 40, 60, 80. "Ow, my knees," Jake said, rubbing his temporarily elderly joints. "Great, like they didn't hurt enough already." Then he was young again. He shrugged and kept walking. Mira's colors cycled through confusion yellow. "That should have trapped him in a causality loop." "Maybe it did and he didn't notice," Vex offered. The corridor, perhaps annoyed that its best trick had been met with mild commentary about joint pain, escalated. It began splitting Jake across dimensions. Suddenly there were 3 Jakes, then 5, then a dozen, all walking in slightly different directions through slightly different versions of the hallway. One, Jake waved at another Jake. "Hey man, weird day, huh?" The other, Jake nodded. "Tell me about it." Then they all merged back into one Jake, who stumbled slightly and continued forward. "Okay, that was trippy. Still need to pee though." In the observation deck, a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread that something impossible was happening, which, on Nexus Orbital, was saying something. There was a Tholian monk, 3 Zentari officers, a family of Glebnaks who'd been on a station tour, and Doug from accounting, who was just happy to have a break from filing requisition forms. "Is he actually succeeding?" someone whispered. "He's ignoring it," Mira said, her voice filled with scientific horror and grudging respect. "The corridor is throwing everything at him, and he's just not engaging." The corridor tried gravity inversion. Jake walked on the ceiling briefly, complained about the blood rushing to his head, and somehow found himself right side up again. The corridor tried showing him visions of his past, his future, and several possible presents he'd narrowly avoided. Jake squinted at them. "Is that me with a mustache? Dodged a bullet there." The corridor tried splitting him across quantum states, making him exist and not exist simultaneously. Jake experienced a brief moment of existential uncertainty, and then decided he was too tired to care about that philosophical nonsense. With each failed attempt, something unprecedented began to happen. The corridor started to straighten out. The breathing walls calmed down. The gravity picked a direction and stuck with it. The impossible angles became merely improbable, then just vaguely weird, then actually kind of normal. By the time Jake reached the halfway point, the quantum corridor looked like a regular hallway having an identity crisis. "This is impossible," Vex said. "Clearly not," Mira replied, her entire body now pulsing with excited amber light. "He's doing it. The human is actually doing it. But how? I have no idea." Jake checked his phone again. Still no signal. He sighed and pocketed it, continuing his walk through what had been, until 5 minutes ago, the most dangerous 50 meters in known space. The corridor made one last, desperate attempt. It threw up a wall of pure cosmic horror, the kind of thing that made people's brains try to run away from their skulls. Tentacles and teeth and geometries that shouldn't exist, all manifested at once in a final, spectacular display of ancient power. Jake stopped walking. Everyone in the observation deck held their breath. Then Jake pulled out his phone again, checked to see if the cosmic horror would show up on camera. It didn't. Shrugged and walked right through it. "Huh," he said. "Thought I saw something, probably just tired." The cosmic horror dissipated, apparently giving up. 30 seconds later, Jake Morrison emerged from the other end of the quantum corridor, completely unchanged, mildly confused, and still desperately needing a bathroom. His first words upon exiting were, "So where's that bathroom? Also, does this station have a sandwich place? I'm starving." In the observation deck, Vex experienced what could only be described as his entire worldview collapsing and reforming into a shape that hurt to contemplate. Dr. Mira cycled through colors so rapidly she looked like a rainbow having a seizure. And somewhere in the galactic network, a notification began spreading. A human just walked through the quantum corridor. The galaxy would never be quite the same. Within 6 minutes, every major news network in 17 star systems was broadcasting footage of Jake's walk. Within 12 minutes, the footage had been watched 5 billion times. Within 20 minutes, There were already 3 conspiracy theories, 2 religious interpretations, and 1 extremely questionable documentary being produced. The observation deck had gone from a small crowd to absolute chaos. Beings from 40 different species were crammed into a space designed for maybe 15, all trying to get a look at the human who'd just done the impossible. "Is he divine?" an Tholian monk asked, pressing against the glass. "Is he stupid?" a Zentari officer countered. "Can we clone him?" asked a scientist whose ethics were clearly negotiable. Jake, blissfully unaware of the pandemonium, had found a chair and was eating a protein bar someone had given him while he waited to be told where the bathroom was. He was browsing his phone, which now somehow had signal. Probably because the corridor had gotten so confused it had accidentally fixed the station's Wi-Fi. Vex stood in the center of the chaos, all 4 arms hanging limply at his sides, staring at nothing in particular. His entire military career had been built on the principle that some things were impossible. The corridor was unconquerable. That was a fact. Facts weren't supposed to get up and walk through impossibility while complaining about their phone reception. "Commander," one of his officers said carefully, "Command wants to know if we should promote you for solving the ancient mystery. The human solved it." "Yes, but you were in charge when he did." "I tried to stop him. Should I tell them that?" "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I might be a plant. Are you sure I'm not a plant?" The officer backed away slowly. Dr. Mira, having recovered from her chromatic episode, was frantically taking readings from the corridor. Her scanners were showing impossible data. The corridor's quantum variance had dropped by 90%. The dimensional instability was almost gone. The reality warping field that had been active for 10,000 years was now operating at roughly the same level as a microwave that occasionally sparked. "It learned," she whispered. "The corridor actually learned from the encounter." "Learned what?" Vex asked, emerging from his existential crisis long enough to be professionally curious. "That there's no point warping reality for someone who doesn't care if reality is warped." Across the station, emergency meetings were being called. The academic consortium wanted Jake for study. The military wanted him for weapon development. The religious orders wanted him for worship or possibly ritual sacrifice, depending on which interpretation of the corridor they subscribed to. A Tholian high priest burst into the observation deck, robes flowing dramatically. "The human must be tested. We must know if he is the prophesied one or merely the universe's cosmic punchline." "Can it be both?" someone asked. The priest paused. "The council is divided on that question." Jake, hearing his name mentioned, looked up from his phone. "Hey, quick question. Is anyone actually going to show me where the bathroom is, or is this like a whole thing now?" "It's a thing," Vex said tiredly. "It's definitely a thing." "Cool. Can it be a thing that happens near a bathroom?" A Glebnak child about 3 feet tall and covered in what appeared to be organized moss tugged on Jake's jacket. "Mr. Human, are you a god?" Jake looked down at the child, then at the crowd, then back at the child. "Kid, I drove my cargo ship into a station by accident because I was trying to change the radio. I am the furthest thing from a god. I'm barely qualified to be a person." This somehow made the crowd more excited. "He has divine humility," someone shouted. "He denies his own nature," another added. "He's just like one of us," a third contributed, missing the point entirely. Mira approached Jake, her colors settled into determined purple. "Human, I need to ask you something very important." "Sure, hit me." "What were you thinking while you walked through the corridor?" Jake considered this. "Honestly, I was thinking about whether I left my cargo bay doors open. Also, I was trying to remember if I'd eaten lunch. Oh, and there was this song stuck in my head. You know that one that goes, na 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 something something weekend? That one. You were thinking about lunch, and a song. And your cargo bay. Door locks are expensive, man, can't be too careful. Ooh." Mira's colors flickered. "You weren't thinking about the corridor at all." "Should I have been? It was just a hallway." "It was an ancient precursor test of cosmic significance." "Was it, though? Because from where I'm standing it was a 50-meter walk to find a bathroom I still haven't found." Vex laughed. It started as a chuckle, then built into a full 4-armed belly laugh that echoed through the observation deck. It was the laugh of someone whose brain had finally broken and decided that breaking was actually kind of liberating. "What's so funny?" Jake asked. "Everything," Vex gasped between laughs. "Absolutely everything. We spent 10,000 years trying to understand the corridor. We sent our best minds, our greatest warriors, our most advanced technology, and the solution was to send someone who didn't understand the question." "I'm still lost on what the question was," Jake admitted. "Exactly." Doug from accounting raised his hand timidly. "So just to be clear for the report I need to file, did humanity just solve the greatest mystery in galactic history?" "Yes," Mira said. "By accident," Vex added. "While looking for a bathroom," Jake finished. Doug sighed and pulled out his tablet. "I'm going to need so many forms for this." 3 hours later, after Jake had finally been shown to a bathroom and gotten his sandwich, decent 7 out of 10 would eat again, the observation deck had been cleared of everyone except Vex, Mira, Jake, and a holographic display showing enough data to make a statistics professor cry. "Okay," Mira said, her colors settled into lecture mode blue. "I've analyzed everything. I know what happened." "It was a hallway," Jake offered. "It was not a hallway, it was a test." "For what?" "We're not entirely sure, but based on the precursor writings we've translated, the corridor was designed to filter consciousness, to separate those who could transcend expectation from those who couldn't." Vex leaned forward, interested despite his earlier breakdown. "And every species failed because? Because we all treated it as a test." Mira's colors shifted to excited yellow. "Every species that entered brought their expectations with them. Warriors expected combat, scientists expected puzzles, philosophers expected enlightenment. The corridor responded to those expectations by providing exactly what they anticipated, and then warping it." "So it's like a cosmic mirror?" Vex asked. "More like a cosmic troll," Mira corrected. "It gives you what you expect, and then punishes you for expecting it. The Kron warrior expected a fight, so the corridor showed him every possible battle simultaneously, until his consciousness collapsed into plant form. The silicate scholar expected logic, so the corridor showed her every logical possibility across infinite dimensions." "That's kind of messed up," Jake said, finishing his sandwich. "It's brilliant," Mira countered. "The test wasn't to overcome the corridor. The test was to recognize there was nothing to overcome. The precursors wanted to find beings who could walk through existence without trying to conquer, understand, or define it." Vex's eye stalks drooped. "So, for 10,000 years, we've been failing a test about not treating things like a test." "Essentially, yes. I hate the precursors. They've been dead for 50,000 years. I hate them retroactively." Jake raised his hand like he was in school. "So I passed because I didn't care." "You passed because you had no framework for caring," Mira explained. "You didn't know about the corridor's history. You didn't bring any cultural baggage or species-specific expectations. You genuinely just needed to get to the other side, and were mildly annoyed that it was taking longer than expected. The galaxy's greatest mystery," Vex said slowly, "was solved by apathy." "Not apathy," Mira corrected. "Perspective, or rather the complete lack of the wrong perspective." She turned to Jake. "When the corridor tried to aid you, what did you think?" "That my knees hurt." "When it split you across dimensions?" "That it was trippy." "When it showed you cosmic horror?" "That I was probably tired and seeing things." "You reframed every attack as a mundane inconvenience. The corridor couldn't process that. It's designed to challenge consciousness, but you refused to be challenged. You just kept walking." Jake shrugged. "I mean, what else was I gonna do? Turn around? I still needed the bathroom." Vex felt something click in his head. It was the sound of understanding, followed immediately by the sound of his ego deflating. The corridor wasn't testing strength or intelligence. It was testing the ability to not overcomplicate things. "Humans are exceptional at that," Mira said, and it wasn't entirely a compliment. "Hey," Jake protested, "we complicate plenty of stuff. Have you seen our tax codes, our relationship dynamics, the rules of cricket?" "But when it comes to cosmic significance," Mira continued, "you seem uniquely qualified to ignore it entirely." "Is that a species trait?" Vex asked. Jake considered this. I mean, we did spend millions of years evolving, developed space travel, discovered alien life, and immediately started arguing about whether aliens should be allowed to use our parking spots. So, yeah, probably. Vex stood up, stretching all four arms. This is going to change everything. If humans can walk through the corridor, we can use it for transportation, research, maybe even figure out what the precursors actually wanted. Or, Jake said, and hear me out here, you could just leave it alone and let it keep doing its weird hallway thing. Why would we do that? Because maybe the precursors made it weird for a reason? And maybe that reason is stay out of our weird hallway? Mira's colors flickered uncertainly. That's actually a valid point. Or we could use it, Vex countered, and finally get some benefit from 10,000 years of confusion and casualties. Also a valid point, Mira admitted. Jake stood up, brushing sandwich crumbs off his jacket. Look, I'm just a cargo pilot who took a wrong turn and really needed to pee. I don't know anything about cosmic significance or precursor tests, but I do know that sometimes when you find something weird and dangerous, the smart move is to put up a sign that says, "This is weird and dangerous," and then go find a different hallway. We can't just abandon the greatest discovery in galactic history, Vex said. Why not? It's been here for 10,000 years. It'll be here for 10,000 more. But now we understand it. Do we, though? Jake asked. Or do we just know that I can walk through it because I don't care enough to fail? Because those seem like different things. Vex opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, then opened it again, then gave up. The human has a point, Mira said reluctantly. The human has too many points, Vex grumbled. It's annoying. Jake checked his phone. Anyway, I should probably get back to my ship before I get more parking tickets. Do you guys do parking tickets in space? Because I feel like that's the kind of petty bureaucracy that transcends species. Wait, Vex said. You're leaving, just like that? I mean, yeah, I've got a delivery to make, already behind schedule. This was a weird detour, but I need to get back to work. You just solved the greatest mystery in galactic history. And I'm very happy for everyone involved, but I've got a cargo hold full of synthetic protein that needs to get to the outer colonies, and I'm already going to lose my bonus for being late. Mira and Vex watched as Jake walked toward the exit, hands in his pockets, humming that same commercial jingle. Should we stop him? Mira asked. I don't think we could if we tried, Vex replied. Jake paused at the door and turned back. Oh, hey, one more thing. The corridor, it works both ways, right? Because I'm not doing that walk again unless I absolutely have to. It should work both ways, Mira said. Theoretically. Cool. Well, if anyone needs to use it, just remember, don't think too hard, keep walking, and maybe bring snacks. It's a long 50 meters when you're hungry. And with that, Jake Morrison, humanity's accidental representative and the galaxy's most reluctant hero, left the observation deck to go find his illegally parked cargo ship. 3 months later, the quantum corridor had become the galaxy's strangest commuter route. The station had been forced to install signs, lots of signs. Warning: corridor may cause temporal displacement. Humans accepted for some reason. Please do not attempt transit without human guide. Management not responsible for existential transformations. And Jake's personal favorite: the bathroom is not through the corridor. Please stop asking. Jake had somehow become Nexus Orbital's most essential employee, which was hilarious considering he wasn't technically an employee. He'd been offered contracts, positions, titles that included way too many syllables. He'd turned them all down and instead started what he called Cosmic Uber, a service where he walked people through the corridor for a reasonable fee. It's easy money, he'd explained to Vex during one of their increasingly frequent coffee meetings. I walk through, they follow behind me, the corridor behaves itself, everyone's happy. You're charging people to follow you through a hallway, Vex said. I'm charging people to safely traverse an ancient precursor artifact of cosmic significance, Jake corrected. There's a difference. Is there, though? One sounds better on the invoice. The system worked surprisingly well. As long as a human was walking through, the corridor remained stable. It was like having a security blanket made of apathy. Scientists theorized that the corridor's quantum field was somehow calibrated to human indifference. Philosophers argued about whether this made humans cosmically significant or just universally disappointing. The Tholian monks had split into two sects, one that believed humans were divine messengers and one that believed humans were the universe's way of admitting it had run out of good ideas. Both sects sent Jake fruit baskets every week, which he appreciated, even if he didn't understand the theology behind them. Vex had been promoted, demoted, and then promoted again. The Zentaria High Command couldn't decide if solving the corridor mystery was a triumph of military leadership or an embarrassing demonstration that 10,000 years of military strategy had been overthrown by a guy who'd been looking for a bathroom. Eventually, they'd settled on a compromise. Vex was now Special Advisor to Human Affairs, which sounded important but mostly meant he had to have coffee with Jake twice a week and make sure the human didn't accidentally start another cosmic incident. Dr. Mira had written 17 papers on what she called the human apathy principle. None of them had been accepted by major journals because her central thesis, that humans succeeded through aggressive mediocrity and a fundamental disinterest in cosmic significance, was considered too depressing to publish. She'd started a blog instead. It was surprisingly popular. The corridor itself seemed almost happy with the new arrangement, if an ancient alien artifact could be happy. It still did its weird reality warping thing when non-humans tried to enter alone. But when Jake was leading tours, it settled down to mild temporal turbulence and occasional gravity hiccups. "It's like it's bored," Jake had said during one crossing, leading a family of Glebnaks who were using the corridor as a shortcut to the entertainment district. Like it spent 10,000 years trying to mess with people, and now it's just going through the motions. On this particular morning, Jake was leading his fourth group of the day, a mixed group of tourists, a few scientists who were still collecting data, and one very nervous Kron who'd been convinced by his therapist that facing his fears would help with his trauma. The fact that his genetic ancestor was now a potted plant in Storage Bay 7 probably wasn't helping his anxiety. "All right, folks," Jake said, standing at the corridor entrance with all the enthusiasm of a tour guide who'd given this speech too many times. "Welcome to Cosmic Uber. Keep up, don't wander off, and if you see anything weird, just ignore it. The corridor feeds on attention, so the less you care, the better." "What if we care a lot?" asked a silicate child. "Then try to care quietly. Ready? Let's go." They entered the corridor. It did its thing, walls breathing, gravity suggesting alternative arrangements, time making uncomfortable eye contact, but with Jake leading, everything stayed manageable. He provided running commentary like a bored museum guide. "On your left, you'll see reality fractioning into possible timelines. Don't worry about it, they all merge back together eventually. Watch your step, the floor's deciding whether down is a direction today. Yes, those are your alternate selves from parallel dimensions. Wave if you want, they can't actually see you." By the time they reached the other side, everyone was intact, unchanged, and only mildly traumatized by the experience. "Please rate your experience 5 stars, Jake said as they exited. "And remember, Cosmic Uber, because walking through cosmic horror should be affordable and convenient." Back in the observation deck, Vex was giving a tour to a delegation from the academic consortium. They wanted to study the corridor, understand it, maybe write some papers that would actually get published, unlike Mira's rejected attempts. "The human makes it look so easy," one scientist complained, watching Jake on the monitors. "That's because it is easy," Vex explained. "For him, for the rest of us, it's a nightmare of quantum uncertainty and existential dread." "Have you tried walking through without him?" "Once. I came out 3 hours younger, and my fourth arm was temporarily a fish. Do not recommend." In Storage Bay 7, the Kron warrior, formerly known as a person, continued his photosynthesis in peaceful silence. Jake had named him Steve, which seemed disrespectful until you considered that nobody else had bothered naming him anything. At least Steve suggested some dignity, some acknowledgement of personhood, even if that personhood was now expressed through chlorophyll. Jake visited Steve sometimes, usually during his breaks. He'd water the plant and talk about his day. "Another busy morning, Steve. Led 6 groups through. One guy asked if the corridor could fix his relationship problems. I told him no, but honestly, temporal displacement might be less complicated than couples therapy." Steve rustled his leaves, which probably meant nothing, but Jake chose to interpret as agreement. You know what's weird, Steve? Everyone keeps asking me how I did it, how I walked through the corridor, and I don't know how to tell them that I didn't do anything. I just walked. That's it. No secret technique, no special training. I just put one foot in front of the other and didn't think too hard about it. More rustling. Yeah, I know. Apparently that's revolutionary. Who knew that the greatest mystery in galactic history could be solved by not overthinking things? If I'd known that being aggressively average was a marketable skill, I would have leaned into it harder in school. His phone buzzed. Another booking request. A group of 12 wanted to cross in an hour. Duty calls, Steve. Keep up the photosynthesis. You're doing great. Jake left the storage bay and headed back toward the corridor. He passed Mira in the hallway, her colors cycling through thoughtful green. Still trying to figure it out? He asked. Always, she admitted. The data doesn't make sense. By every law of physics we understand, the corridor should still be dangerous. But it's not when you're involved. Maybe physics is overrated. That's not how physics works. And yet here we are. Jake grinned. Look, I've given up trying to understand it. The corridor does its thing, I do my thing. Somehow those things are compatible. That's enough for me. That attitude is exactly why it works, Mira said, her colors shifting to resigned purple. And exactly why it's maddening to study. Science is hard, Jake said sympathetically. Have you tried just not caring? Works for me. I'm a scientist. Not caring is literally against my job description. Sounds stressful, Jake continued toward the corridor entrance, where his next group was already waiting. A dozen beings from 6 different species, all looking nervous. He recognized the expression. Everyone got it before their first crossing, that mix of excitement and terror that came from willingly walking into something that had historically turned people into potted plants. All right, everyone, Jake said, clapping his hands together. Who's ready to make history by taking a shortcut? An elderly Tholian raised a tentacle. Is it true that you were blessed by the precursors? No. Is it true that you're actually a precursor in disguise? Also no. Is it true that you once wrestled a space bear? That's not even related to the corridor, but yes, and it was self-defense. The group murmured appreciatively. Jake led them through. The corridor did its usual performance, reality bending, time stuttering, existence questioning itself, but everyone made it through fine, as they always did when Jake was there. As they probably always would, because the universe had apparently decided that one confused human was enough to break 10,000 years of cosmic tradition. At the end of the day, Jake sat in the observation deck with Vex, both nursing drinks that were probably too strong for a work night, but felt entirely justified given their respective career trajectories. Do you ever think about what this all means? Vex asked, gesturing vaguely at the corridor. The bigger picture. Jake considered this. Not really. I think about whether I'm getting paid on time, whether my ship needs maintenance, and whether the station cafeteria is ever going to get better coffee. The cosmic significance stuff is above my pay grade. You changed the galaxy. I walked through a hallway. You solved an ancient mystery. I needed a bathroom. Vex laughed. That same 4-armed belly laugh from 3 months ago. You know what the worst part is? I spent 20 years studying the corridor. 2 decades of my life dedicated to understanding it. And you showed up, walked through it by accident, and solved everything in 5 minutes. If it makes you feel better, I'm not sure I actually solved anything. I just demonstrated that the solution was ignoring the problem. That does not make me feel better. Yeah, I didn't think it would. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the corridor on the monitors. A cleaning crew was walking through it now, 3 humans Jake had trained. The corridor barely rippled. It had learned, or adapted, or just given up. Nobody was quite sure which. What are you going to do? Vex asked. Long term, I mean. You can't run Cosmic Uber forever. Jake shrugged. Why not? It's steady work, decent pay, and I get to meet interesting people. Plus, every time I think about quitting, someone offers me more money to stay. It's a pretty good gig. You don't want more. Fame, recognition, a place in history. I've got all that already, and it's mostly annoying. People keep asking for autographs. Do you know how weird it is to sign autographs for something you did by accident? It's like being famous for tripping and accidentally inventing a new dance move. That's oddly specific. I might have also done that in high school. Vex's eye stalks swiveled to look at Jake directly. You're content. Actually content. Not pretending, not settling. You're genuinely happy being a guy who walks through a corridor for a living. Is that weird? By galactic standards? Extremely. Most species spend their lives searching for purpose, meaning cosmic significance. You found yours by accident and decided it was good enough. Yep, that's very human of you. Thanks, I think. They finished their drinks. Vex went back to his quarters to fill out reports that would inevitably be filed under unexplained human nonsense. Jake went back to his ship, which was still parked illegally, but nobody had the heart to ticket it anymore. Before he left the observation deck, he took one last look at the corridor. 50 meters of ancient alien architecture that had stumped civilization for 10,000 years. Defeated by a cargo pilot with a full bladder and no sense of cosmic significance. The corridor pulsed gently on the monitors, its quantum readings stable, its reality warping capabilities operating at minimal levels. It looked, for all intents and purposes, like a regular hallway. Jake smiled. You're welcome, I guess. Somewhere in the station's records, a notation was added to the historical files. The quantum corridor crisis was resolved on a Tuesday by human Jake Morrison, who was looking for a bathroom. Current status: operational for transit when humans are present. See appendix for list of humans trained for corridor duty. See additional appendix for philosophical implications that nobody can agree on. See third appendix for list of species who are still angry about this. And in Storage Bay 7, a potted plant formerly known as a Kron warrior continued to photosynthesize peacefully, unaware that his accidental transformation had become part of the most absurd success story in galactic history. The universe kept spinning, the corridor kept working. And Jake Morrison kept walking through it, day after day, leading tourists and scientists and nervous first-timers, turning cosmic horror into a commuter route. Because sometimes the greatest mysteries